The shower water hitting your skin is cathartic in a way that you can't quite describe. It felt almost as though each individual drop of water contained its own panacea, working its way into your skin and healing you of everything that you had experienced over the course of the past few weeks. You let it wash over you, and as you scrubbed yourself clean, you could only hope that it would rinse away whatever was left of your emotional ties to Kylo Ren. You knew it wouldn't be that easy, knew it couldn't be, but you wanted to let go of him all the same. He was alive, at least for now, but he was a prisoner, and there was no way you could be with him, so there was no point in screwing up the rest of your future by trying. Nevertheless, as you got out of the shower, Annie was sitting in your bed, anxious to see his father, and so, after a quick meal with him and Latson, you headed over to the command center to see Leia. Poe was still in the medbay resting up, and you knew that he would probably want to spend a lot more time with you, now that Rey and Finn were gone, and they had left you in his charge. Therefore, if you wanted to see Kylo, you had to do it fast, as you doubted that Poe would permit you to see him. But even as the thought crossed your mind, you had to shake your head to clear it. No, there was no way that Poe would restrict you from doing anything you wanted to do, so long as it wasn't ridiculously dangerous. In fact, if you wanted to see Kylo Ren again, he would probably offer to go with you and hold your hand the whole way through it. You were beginning to wonder if Leia just lived in the command center, or whether it was just your force luck that she always happened to be in there whenever you wanted to talk to her. Today was no exception. She was in there, talking to a general or someone of higher command when you walked in, and so you just quietly waited by the door until she was ready to speak with you. By the time she walked over to you, you could tell that she was flustered, not her usual composed self, and you wondered if she was also being subtly influenced by Kylo's presence on base. "I don't think I need to ask why you're here," she says as she looks you up and down. "How are you?" You look down, embarrassed, rubbing the toe of your boot into the floor. "I guess you heard about my little outburst, huh?" She just shakes her head and lets out a sigh, like that was just one more thing she had to deal with. "You're going to ask me if you can see him again, aren't you?" "Actually, I was going to ask if Annie can see him," you say matter-of-factly. "I know the things he's done, but Annie doesn't, and he really wants to see his father." Leia just shakes her head and lets out a sigh as if she doesn't think it's a good idea. "Annie's talking to someone at night, Leia." Leia looks up quickly, her eyes searching yours. "Who?" "Not sure," you admit as you shake your head from side to side. "Latson doesn't think it's Snoke, and I don't think it's Kylo, but I won't know for sure until I get them in a room together to see for myself." She looks at you as she gnaws on her lower lip nervously, trying to make a decision. "What did he say?" "Annie, you ask?" "I don't know. I haven't talked to him about it yet. I'm hoping that I'll catch him talking myself and be able to piece the conversation together from there to figure out who he's talking to." Leia looks at you and seems to harden her resolve. "You did your part. You got my son home, and my brother took Rey and Finn to take Snoke out once and for all, thanks to you. I don't think I'm in a position to deny you anything." "I don't want anything," you say before you quickly correct yourself. "Actually, I would like to stay here, if that's okay with you." She nods. "And I want to have access to Kylo." She tilts her head to the side and sighs as she tells you what part of the base he's being held in. "Do I need a special kind of key card or anything to get in there?" you ask. "No," she says, shaking her head. "We didn't want to risk anyone potentially trying to break him out, so I had Luke seal it with a special force lock so you can only get in if you are aligned with the light side of the force. That limits who has access to him to a small number of people, yourself being one of them." You bite your lip nervously, remembering how Kylo was still drawn to the light because of the bond you shared with him. But, Kylo... She holds up her hand to stop you, as if she already knows what you're going to ask. He has since abandoned that path, is all she says, and you nod your head. How is he? You ask. It's been a week. How is he doing? He's being difficult, Leia says, shaking her head in exasperation. I swear, sometimes it's just like he... She waves her hand dramatically and doesn't continue, and for the first time, you're starting to realize that his presence on base might be affecting more than just you, although you couldn't tell if she was being influenced by the Force or merely the circumstances. She finally collects herself as she looks back up at you. Go see him, if you must. I know he's Annie's father, but just be careful. Of course. Thank you, you say quickly. She turns to go when you catch her arm. I saw Snoke, by the way. She spins around to look at you, her eyes wide. Just in a hologram, on the ship. He ordered Kylo to kill me, and it was pretty touch and go there for a while, but he couldn't bring himself to do it. I don't know. I thought you should know that. You turn around quickly and leave the room, heading down the hall as fast as you can without looking back. A part of you didn't know why you had told Leia about that, but it didn't take you long for you to puzzle it out. Kylo couldn't bring himself to kill you. He had almost killed Finn, and he could have killed Poe and Rey, but he had willingly spared you. It shouldn't have meant that much, but it was at least a very small sign that there was still potentially a glimmer of light in him, some bit of goodness that hadn't been irreversibly eradicated from his being. And while other people would have chided you against that sort of thinking, you knew Leia would want to hear it. After everything was said and done, she was still his mother, and there would be nothing that he could do to stop her from hoping that he would turn from the darkness and become her son again. You're so immersed in your thoughts that you don't even realize that you've made your way down to Kylo's cell. She had told you what general part of the base he was in, but it was like your feet had just guided you here on instinct. You could feel him now, so close to you, and it took you a moment to compose yourself before you put your hand on the keypad and focused your energy. It took a few minutes, but you focused on Rey and imagined her feeding you her strength, and that was the final push that you needed to make the scanner beep with a tiny green speck of light and allowed the door to slide open. Inside, there was another door with a slot for food, and you mentally put your hand on this door and allowed it to swing open using the Force. The cell is just a bit smaller than your bedroom, but still a decent size. There's a small bed pushed up against the far corner, and a toilet and a sink in the other to at least give him a place to properly relieve himself. Other than that, though, there was nothing else in the cell. Everything was white, from floor to ceiling to sheets, and Kylo stood out in stark contrast against his surroundings, his familiar black armor and dark hair looking almost like a stain against the cleanliness of the room. He eyes you curiously as you walk in, his facial expression giving nothing away. It's nice in here, you say softly, your eyes drifting towards every corner of the room. Nicer than that cell you had me locked in. I was wondering when you would come, Kylo says immediately, as if he had been waiting for you. Sorry, you reply with a slight laugh. I've been in the med bay all week. Apparently, I was completely out of sorts. He tilts his head to the side just slightly, as if he's concerned. Although the action was so slight, anyone who didn't know him wouldn't have perceived anything out of the ordinary. Apparently, you trying to kill me was a really distressing event for me, and I passed out before I could even get off the ship. You tell him as you start to pace about the small room. You know, that kind of stress could kill a person. You know I wouldn't have gone through with it, Kylo says dismissively. Wouldn't or couldn't? You ask sharply, crossing your arms over your chest. Kylo just sits there and sulks in consideration. Either, he says at length. You know I couldn't hurt you. It would have been like killing a piece of myself. As much as I would like to destroy the last bit of light in me, I couldn't hurt you. You're quiet for a moment, and again, you can't really bring any thoughts to mind. It was like now that he was finally here, your brain was relaxed, at ease, simply comforted by merely being so close to him. Are we really that connected? You finally ask. Kylo just smirks as he shakes his head and decides to take the conversation in a different direction. You played me, he says, and there's a bit of an edge to his voice. You're just like your teacher, the one you loathed so much. Now you're the one working for the Resistance, manipulating me all on your own. Well done. For a moment, you wonder if, subconsciously, that's why you had gone ahead and went through with this. When you had been sent to the Starkiller base, you had been working with the Resistance without your knowledge under B's tutelage, while he set you up as bait to manipulate Kylo Ren. And now, that was what you had done here, except you were the one pulling the strings. You were no longer a pawn, but the master in your own manipulations. You had finally gained control over a situation that you had previously been a victim in. The thought concerns you, but you push it away. Don't try to pin this on me, you tell him. You're the one who asked for me to come in the first place, and you knew I was there. Deep down, I think you knew. That's why you allowed me to stay. You wanted to give this up. You knew Snoke would demand that you kill me sooner or later, and so you were just waiting for the Resistance to show up and take you prisoner so you could be done with this once and for all. You don't know that, Kylo says quietly, but he shifts uncomfortably as he looks away. Oh no? You ask as you raise your eyebrows. I can feel you, just as you can feel me. You're weak, defeated. You've killed so many innocent people, done so many terrible things, and you killed your own father when you could have turned back right then. I can practically smell the regret on you. Kylo refuses to meet your eyes, but you don't stop. You could have gone back with him, Kylo. You could have joined the Resistance back when there was at least a chance of forgiveness, and then you could have come back for me and Annie. You would have been in danger, Kylo mutters. The First Order would have come after you, used you as bait against me, and I couldn't... You didn't murder your father to protect us. You spit. Seriously, don't even go there. Kylo glances at you before he looks away again, shaking his head. This isn't easy for me, you continue. I loved you, and I think deep down I've always loved you. Even though I've second-guessed it and doubted you so many times, I really think I did, but it doesn't matter. You have done so many bad things, it's past that point now. You may have treated me well, but they're never going to let you out of here after everything you've done. You had your chance to fix things, to make things right, and you've turned your back on all of them. The world is done giving you second chances, and so am I. Because of the pilot, Kylo murmurs to himself, and you can feel the jealousy ebbing off of him in tiny little ripples. You close your eyes and try to refocus yourself to put up your shield to prevent you from experiencing it full blast. Don't bring him into this, you mutter under your breath as you open your eyes again. I wonder, Kylo turns to you suddenly, tilting his head to one side. You talk about how many people I've killed, but how many people do you think your pilot killed when he destroyed the Starkiller base and sent the planet into collapse? The corner of your upper lip pulls into a snarl. You had never really thought about it that way before. Poe always seemed intent on doing good, on saving people. It almost hadn't occurred to you that he had to kill some in order to save many. It's a war, you say quietly. People die on both sides. It's just the way it goes. Kylo just shakes his head and laughs at you, and so you decide to change the topic. Do you want to see Annie? He looks up at you sharply as he stops laughing. I won't pretend to be a family, he tells you firmly. You wouldn't have to pretend, you snap. Annie doesn't know what you've done. He knows you've done bad things, but that's all he knows. He wants to see you. He wants to see his father. Kylo turns away from you, and you get a sense that this conversation is over. You shake your head as you turn to go, but you can't. There's still one thing Kylo is keeping from you, something he would never tell you, even if you asked him. In a rush, you storm towards him and climb onto his lap, pinning his wrists back against the wall behind him. He looks surprised, and you hold his arms down with your elbows as you place your hands on either side of his temples and concentrate. Kylo grunts from beneath you, but he's weak, you can tell. He's already had his mind probed by Luke, trying to extract Snoke's whereabouts from him, and that had not come easily. "Show me what I want to see," you urge. "Let me see it." You can sense that his mental shield is raised, but you keep pushing, keep trying to get in. He's weaker than you, and you can see him gritting his teeth as you open your eyes. And for some reason, this doesn't bother you as much as it probably should. He had done this many times to many people, and it was about time someone let him know how much it hurt. "Sadie," you tell him. "Show me Sadie." And suddenly, it's right there, beneath your fingertips. There's no audio, but you get quick flashes of Kylo entering Sadie's father's shop with a group of stormtroopers filing in behind him. You can see Sadie's father yelling something, probably telling her to run, and you watch as Kylo slams him violently against the back wall with the Force. You can see Sadie walk out into the front room and snap something angrily at Kylo, but you can't read her lips to determine what she's saying. Instead, you can only watch helplessly as Kylo holds out one hand to drag her up in the air and mind probe her to get your whereabouts. You wait for it, the final blow, but it doesn't come. When he has what he wants, he just simply lets her collapse into a heap on the ground and walks out. "I knew you didn't kill her," you say, unable to suppress the smirk on your face. "Happy?" Kylo asks bitterly. And you can tell that he hates being this weak and defenseless, even in front of you. "You got what you wanted. Now," "Not yet," you say, and Kylo lets out a soft grunt as you push your way back into his mind again. "You know what I want, so show it to me." You're still not picking up any audio, and the only thing that flashes before your vision is a variety of images, visual memories, but they are going too fast and you can't get more than a glimpse of any of them. What you can pick up on, however, are the emotions imprinted on each memory, and you let each one crash over you like a wave. Kylo lets out a shuddering breath, and you can suddenly feel how much he missed you. This goes beyond simple longing. It's almost like there's an ache in your bones that makes them feel hollow, as if a piece of yourself was actually missing. Was that really what he felt like when he wasn't with you? You can pick up on other things too, his rage, his frustration, but underneath all of that, there's a longing for you that you wouldn't have actually believed if he had told you. No, you had to be in his head, experiencing this firsthand to really accept that this is what he truly felt deep down, where he would never have to admit to it. Nights were the hardest for him too. You can feel it, nights when he woke up mumbling your name in his sleep as he awoke from another dream that he imagined you in. You can hear him talking to you in his head, wishing you were there to hold his hand and just offer him one small bit of focus. It was true then, after all, that you really had been keeping him grounded on the Starkiller base, and you really had been helping him actually stay in control of himself. But when you were no longer there, he felt as though it was almost impossible to stop his rage from taking over. Could the Force bond truly be that powerful? You don't stop to question it as you keep looking through his memories, through his thoughts, how he wanted to see you more than anything, but was afraid that he would be endangering you if he did. And then, when the opportunity arose, he had declined it for fear of letting you see that hideous scar across his face, afraid that you would turn away from him when you did. It wasn't just his physical features that it had burned away. It was his sense of pride, and he knew it would be a constant physical reminder of where he stood in a war that you hated so much. And then, just like that, you can hear Snoke taunting him and his weakness for you, a pathetic girl. You could feel guilt and regret, but it was magnified almost 1,000 times over as he relived murdering his father over and over again until he was determined to bury himself in the darkness once and for all. He knew deep down that you would never, ever forgive him if you ever found out that he had done such an unspeakable thing. He knew that you were too good for him, knew that you would be better off without him. It scorches your heart to feel these thoughts, as if they were your own, but you push through his scattered mess of emotions, push through his desire to completely end these feelings once and for all so he wouldn't be in pain anymore. He was suffering so badly, but he didn't know what to do about it. He wanted to come back to you, to come home. But he knew that would mean surrendering Snoke's influence over him, and he wasn't strong enough to do that either. And so it felt like he was literally being cut in half between the light side and the dark. He knew that either you or Snoke would have to die in order to stop the struggle, and knowing that he was nowhere near powerful enough to kill Snoke, he knew he would have to kill you, but he just couldn't bring himself to do it. You didn't know if it was love. You wasn't even really sure he had the capability to love, but you could feel a pure sense of want. He wanted you by his side. He wanted to see Annie. He wanted to be free of the pain he was in, even if that meant being captured by the Resistance. It was like he was a man half broken on the inside, cracked as much as his kyber crystal and the lightsaber he carried. He wanted to protect you, wanted to keep you safe, and he would do anything in his power to make that happen. You weren't sure if it was simply out of his own self-preservation, but you were almost surprised to see that he liked it. He liked being able to feel you, especially as close as you were now, and you knew while he was on this base, with his physical presence so nearby, that you would be exposed to his daily fluctuations of mood almost constantly if you weren't strong enough to keep your shields up. And then, just like that, you can feel what he felt on the Resolute, the fear that he wouldn't be able to control himself around you, even though he wasn't quite sure what that meant. He wasn't sure if he wanted to kiss you and gather you up in his arms or kill you and cut this dreaded connection once and for all. But as you lay asleep and naked in his arms, vulnerable and completely exposed, he let himself be overwhelmed by your unwavering devotion for him, and he, feeling it as though it was his own, had no choice but to return it, regarding you with sheer adoration. He too had wished that time would stop, that you could just be together in that little room while the wars raged on outside your door. And then, when Snoke had summoned him, you could feel his sense of fear and his regret, overcome by weakness that he had allowed you to convince him to let you stay instead of sending you away for your protection. It was because he was selfish, he knew, wanting you when he knew he could never properly have you. And it was that selfishness that almost led him to kill you. He fueled himself with jealousy, not directed at any one person, but the jealousy that accompanied the realization that he would never get to be with you in the way he truly wanted. He allowed that anger to course through him as he swung at you without any particular sense of urgency, mentally flipping a coin up and down in his mind, but never once glancing at the predictable result. In the end, though, once the hilt was pressed up against your stomach and the inevitable moment became a reality, he knew he couldn't do it. Whether it was a weakness or not, he could not go through with it. That notion had become cemented into his mind when you kissed him, forgiving him for what truly would have become the ultimate sin. If living with his father's blood on his hands was intolerable, he knew that, should he kill you, it would unquestionably lead to his end as well. A part of you knew that he would never have been able to live with himself if he had killed you, but it was another thing to experience it from his perspective, to experience it through his own emotions. You pull your hands off your temples, slowly, your bottom lip quivering. Kylo's glaring at you, but there's no malice behind his eyes, and again you can only see a pitiful sense of fear. It was suddenly easy to picture his anger, easy to picture him flying off the handle, using a destructive display of rage to disguise the fact that he cared deeply. You run your fingertips down his chest, feeling the quick pulse of your own heartbeat in your ears. You don't know what to say to him. You had been physically vulnerable plenty of times, but it was finally as if you knew who Kylo Ren was. Ben Solo would forever be an enigma, a mystery to you, but this was Kylo Ren, the man who allowed himself to be influenced by unfortunate extremes. You still don't know what to say. Truly, there weren't words to describe how much pity you had in your heart for him. Despite all of the terrible things that he had done, you couldn't help but pity him. You could still feel his pain, a hollow numbness in the center of his chest, as if he was physically missing a part of himself that other people took for granted. He meant what he said. He was being torn apart, physically, and there was nothing you could do to help him. If anything, you were the one thing that was holding him back from going over the edge and surrendering himself to the darkness. You didn't ask for it. You didn't ask for yourself to be responsible for him, and yet you were bound to him nonetheless, the same way he was bound to you. You don't say anything. Instead, you just reach forward and put your hands firmly on both cheeks, ignoring the rough pink scar underneath your palm as you pull his lips towards yours and kiss him with all the force and the passion that you can muster. He hesitates, but only for a brief moment before he wraps his arms around you and pulls you into him. You don't know if there are hidden security cameras in this room. You hadn't seen any, but at this point you didn't even care. You fist both of your hands in his hair as you kiss him as hard as you can, pushing all of your strength and your devotion for him into this one physical gesture to prove once and for all that you cared about him, as deeply as he cared about you, and it was too much. Suddenly it was all too much, and you can hear Kylo's hungry growl of lust from beneath you, wanting more, wanting to taste your skin underneath his lips, and that's when you know that you can't, because you can't. Despite the force bond, despite what you felt for each other, this wasn't going to work out. There would be no happy endings here, and Poe was right upstairs. Perfect Poe, with his simple, uncomplicated, sweet nature, who had fallen for you because of the same light that Kylo was drawn to. If Kylo was being split apart, being drawn to both the light and the dark, then it was almost as if you were being torn apart too, the light and the darkness taking on the physical manifestations of different people. The only difference was that this was nowhere near that extreme. Even still, you can't help yourself. You want Kylo, and now you're starting to crave him, and without thinking, you throw yourself off his lap as fast as you can and scramble out the door without looking back, shutting the door firmly behind you. Once outside into the safety of the corridor, you gingerly touch your swollen lips, immediately hating yourself. You shouldn't have done that. Whenever you were with him, it just seemed so easy to just lose yourself in him. But no, you had decided that you weren't going to do that anymore. There was no happy ending with him. And although you had no idea if you would have a better ending with Poe, that didn't matter. Poe was just a guy. There would be plenty of other people down the line that you could date if that didn't work out, but you couldn't help but feel drawn to Kylo. He wasn't just a guy or a person. He was like some deep, intangible thing that you needed in your life, or else it was empty without him. Empty and hollow, just like he had felt without you there. At least you had Annie, some little bit of himself to keep you company all these years, as well as your friends. Kylo had been really and truly alone. He had nobody to care for him. No one to offer him even the smallest bit of reassurance. You slump against the wall and slide down it as you clamp both palms over your mouth to keep from crying out. You jump slightly as something cold and wet trails over the backs of your fingers, and that's when you realize that you're not just crying, but weeping as tears stream down your flushed cheeks. You're so focused on the pain that Kylo had been in, that he was still in, that you didn't even think to question anything more than that. You didn't bother to question if what you had seen or felt had all been real, because you knew implicitly that it had been. For all intents and purposes, Kylo had allowed himself to be captured by the Resistance because he wanted to be with you again, because he wanted to see Annie again, and at least getting to spend a short while with you before his eventual death was enough for him. It was a devastating realization, and you allowed yourself to be completely submersed in these feelings as you sat on the floor outside his door and cried. It never occurred to you that it was more than just a little possible that Kylo Ren had allowed himself to completely immerse himself in these feelings to distract everyone from the real reason as to why he had so easily allowed himself to be captured and brought to the Resistance base. These feelings were so strong and overpowering that they were enough to convince anyone who dared look into his mind that they were real, disguising any suspicion of an ulterior motive. For all of his brash displays of rage and aggression, Kylo Ren had at least learned some mastery over his emotions, and it was enough to fool everyone. Even Rey. Even Luke. Even you.